We are living in transformative times. We are poised to see significant changes thanks to new technology and the determination of policymakers. A new beginning. We're going to talk about a concrete roadmap to enhance cross-border payments. High-level policymakers will discuss the advent of new digital currencies.
With digitalisation of all aspects of our lives, here we are virtually connected, accelerated today by COVID-19, now it takes center stage in policymaking. We have a chance to improve cross-border payments with huge benefits, especially for many of the world's poorest people. And there is a pressing need to do so. At a time when technology is accelerating and changing our lives, cross-border payments still remain slow, opaque, costly, and inaccessible to part of the 1.7 billion people worldwide who are unbanked. Now, fixing these shortcomings will require a concerted and coordinated global effort involving a variety of public and private actors. And it is urgent. We must improve existing systems, and we must explore new ones, potentially taking advantage of central bank digital currencies. Coming up with new solutions could bring significant efficiency gains, but it could also affect monetary and financial stability. Widespread use of new forms of digital money could make it harder for country authorities to run independent monetary policy and control domestic financial conditions. And as we integrate new technologies, we reap off the benefits of doing so, we also must contain risks. And that can only be done through international cooperation to help us all understand the macro-financial effects of using digital money across borders, make sure that all systems, old systems, new systems, operate with each other, foster common settlement infrastructure, and make solutions that benefit all countries and all people.
Let me start by establishing a few important facts. Now, in all our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. And there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is. For example, in the issue of currency substitution, if an advanced economy issues a CBDC and somebody in a third country wants to use it, it will require the consent of the central bank of the residence of that person. Therefore, the degree of control will be far bigger. Now, this, I think, it's good news. Agenda of topics are, for example, CBDC, FinTech, RegTech, different parts of payment systems, issues of identity.
The digital systems they're talking about going to are not currencies. That's what you need to understand. Crypto is not a currency. It's a credit on the company store. Now, what that means is they can stop anybody from transacting in the system. So in essence, in an all-digital, no-cash system run by the central banks, you've got a credit on the company store, and your individual money can be turned on and off or changed in value. They have complete control.
Jay, how you see it? Clearly, central banks may have to regulate private sector firms, there is space for partnership. There may be need to counter with independent solutions what the private sector is coming up, going back to Libra. How do you see remaining on the front of these developments? What is the Fed thinking in that regard? And how do you see your collaboration with BIS? Agustin mentioned the special partnership with the Federal Reserve System. So how do you see this new frontier?
For example, through the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, which, in collaboration with researchers at MIT, is developing a hypothetical central bank digital currency. And as you mentioned, we're doing so within the framework of serving concurrently as supervisor, payment service provider, and issuer of the currency. Central bank money and private dollar-denominated money, particularly commercial bank money, effectively fit together in the current payment system. So any CBDC will necessitate roles for the public and private sector. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jay. This is fascinating, the speed with which central banks, the Fed, are moving in this direction of making sure that the public interest is protected. And talking about public interest, one of the aspects of our conversation today is about inclusion. What can be done so those who have limited access or at this point of time no access whatsoever to the financial system we are describing can be included? How improving cross-border payments can play a role, and to what extent we can venture in technological improvements that can accelerate this process of inclusion, more specifically, digital ID. If we are imagining a world in which digital is the way in which financial transactions take place, how could poor people, especially poor people in poor countries, can be part of it?
A key hurdle to greater inclusion would be the lack of comprehensive and reliable, what you call it, the identity system, whose information can be trusted in other jurisdictions. I agree that offering such a system has to be a cornerstone of global efforts to improve both national and cross-border payments. The establishment of identity systems in the cross-border, which is probably remote, is clearly linked to streamlining the KYC and the customer due diligence processes. And this will prove a challenge for emerging market economies to fund, particularly in the current environment, the current economic environment. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ahmed. A lot of work to be done. And it has to be done recognizing that we are interconnected. We do need to work together, the whole world moving in this direction together. In other words, interoperability, common standards, consistent legal framework. What role do you see for institutions like yours and like mine to make sure that we make progress in a way that brings the world together?
I think if we think in the international dimension, the huge challenge is to assure that the international operability of CBDCs is there. To manage to define the minimum set of standards that are necessary to really have an efficient operability of payments under the new dimension, I think is huge, and it requires to bring all the forces together. And we have to realize that when we deal with payments, electronic payments, there is no room for mistake. So the challenge is huge, and therefore the effort behind being successful will be huge, and therefore we need to add forces with the broad membership of the fund, with the membership of the BIS, in particular the concentration of central banks. I think that we can certainly put a very solid team together to make this happen.
So on behalf of all of those who have tuned in, thank you. Thank you.
You know, the vision they have and where this is going is very, very dark.